Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the third episode of the Forensic Fingerprints. I'm pretty sure it is the third episode. For today's episode, we're going to be covering assignment number 11 for Module 5, which was about analyzing a ransom note. We had to analyze the handwriting, and for this, we had to take measurements of each and every letter and sentence in the ransom note. We had to take the angles, the slant of the writing. We also had to take measurements on the spacing between words and letters. And we also had to compare the ransom note to another 5 samples from the suspects we had. I think number 2 and number 5 were the most accurate ones, if I'm not mistaken, because they both had a very similar cursive style to the one on the ransom note, and the other 3 were just not even close to the writing style of the ransom note, right? Anyways, I think it was really easy to deduce which suspect was the actual one who wrote the ransom note. However, I just think it was really interesting to see how a really small detail, like the way suspect number 2 wrote their F's and their N's, made him the suspect. He had a more pronounced way of writing, I guess you could say it like that. His slant was slightly sharper, and he would also make the F's, like the top of the F was really concave. And the ends, they were just like a scribble, so we could tell they were the same person, definitely. It was definitely a really time-consuming assignment. It was extremely interesting, and it was cool as well. It's not something I would do for fun because it's extremely time-consuming, and at the time I had plenty of other assignments to do, so it was kind of like a little frustrating to tweak with it as I was thinking of my other stuff. But it was still cool regardless. I don't regret it. I feel like it's a pretty interesting procedure. I'm pretty sure I didn't even do it the right way, but I took some measurements and did what I could with what I had, which was nothing more than a ruler and a pen. So yeah, that was really interesting. It was module number 5, assignment 11, I think. I should go check right now. 1 second. It was assignment number 10, actually. Well, I wanted to add a new section for this episode as well. And for this module, we also had the discussion number 11. This one actually is discussion number 11. It was about driving under the influence, and we had to go through some games on some online pages when they were about paying attention to a video into a phone call, right? And there were 2 scenarios. One of them was there was a list of vegetables while driving, right? And the other one was like a wedding plan. There was also a third one, which was kind of like a mini game, and it was extremely frustrating. I can understand that it was an annoying game, but it does convey the really good message on how driving and trying to do something else at the same time does not work out. It ends up being frustrating. It ends up being, I guess the word I'm looking for is not worth it. It comes with many expenses. It does become reckless extremely easily, as we can miss out details like most of the people, when they're not paying attention to the road, they run stop signs, they go too fast on speed bumps, and I don't know, maybe they could even crash. Maybe there could be a car with an open door on the street and they would not notice. I wanted to find an article on drinking and driving. However, I couldn't really find any. And so, because I couldn't find a news article talking about drinking and driving, I'm gonna do a public health alert. This is from the Center of Forensic Science Research and Education, and they issued this public health alert regarding a novel psychoactive substance seen recently in illicit drug material that is similar to, but even more potent than xylazine, the so-called zombie drug. So in July 2022, methamphetamine was detected in several seized drug samples across the state of Maryland, as well as in drug paraphernalia and illicit drug seizures submitted to public health and law enforcement agencies. Since then, it has also been detected in overdoses in St. Louis and clandestine laboratory seizures in Ohio, Florida, and Canada. This is a potent surgical anesthetic approved for veterinary use. So another form of the drug, it's dextroisomer, Dextor, or prosthetics. It's also used in human medicine clinically. It is used to induce sedation, analgesia, anxiolysis, and muscle relaxation. And methamphetamine does not respond to Naxalone, or better known as Narcan. However, Naxalone administration is recommended since it is almost always found in combination with opioids. Similar to warnings with xylazine, the co-positivity of methylphenidine with cocaine, opioids, or other illicit drugs may prolong the effects of these drugs, which can lead to adverse consequences. Lastly, moving away from everything, let's go to the last part of the morgue files. This is an inside look of the story of the notorious Mendes brothers case. On August 20 of 1989, Jose and Kitty Mendes were murdered. On the evening of Sunday, August 20, 1989, Jose and Kitty Mendes were shot multiple times at close range with a shotgun while in the family room of their Beverly Hills mansion. Officers responded to the scene shortly after Mendes, who was 21 back then, called 911 screaming that someone had killed their parents. On the Mendes crime scene, Lai and his 18-year-old brother, Eric Mendes, they later told the investigators that they had arrived home to find their parents shot to death. At the time of his death, Jose Mendes was working for a film studio, running its home video division. Investigators initially suspected that the killings may have tied to his business dealings, but attention soon shifted to the couple's sons, Lai and Eric Mendes. In the wake of crime, the brothers appeared to be spending their parents' money, and lots of it. They purchased Rolex watches, real estate, and they even invested. While the brothers' behavior in the wake of the crime may have seemed unusual, it was not hard evidence back at the time. But then, about 6 months after the crime, in March 1990, police got a tip from an unlikely source. Judalyn Smith, the girlfriend of a psychologist who Lai and Eric Mendez had been talking to. She told police that the brothers had confessed to the killings in therapy, and there was an audio tape recording of it. In March 1990, Lai and Eric Mendez were charged in their parents' murders. Days later, on March 8, 1990, Lai Mendez was arrested by the Beverly Hills police outside the mansion where his parents were killed. 2 days after that, Eric Mendez surrendered at Los Angeles International Airport after returning from Israel, where he had been playing tennis. On July 1993, opening statements began in the Mendez brothers' trial. It was a highly publicized trial. This happened on July 20, 1993. And although they were tried together, they had separate juries deciding their fate. The brothers faced the possibility of the death penalty if convicted of first-degree murder. When Lai Mendez testified at the first trial, the defense argued that the brothers had killed their parents in self-defense and that they were deserving of a lesser charge and punishment. The Mendez brothers also testified about sexual abuse. Both brothers took the stand and described how they say they were abused. Lai Mendez testified that he was sexually assaulted by his mother and father. He said his father began sexually abusing him when he was only 6 years old. Although Lai Mendez testified that his father stopped sexually abusing him when he was 8, Eric Mendez testified that it would never end for him, and that he finally confided in his older brother Lai days before the crime, at age 18. On the Mendez crime scene, the brothers testified that Lai soon confronted the parents, and in the days leading up to the crime, things grew so contentious that they believed their parents were going to kill them to keep the family secret from coming out. They said they believed their parents were going to kill them the night of the crime, and that's why they went into the family room and started shooting their parents. On October 1995, the second trial began. Prosecutors decided to retry the Mendez brothers at the retrial, which began again in October 1955, and consisted of only one jury instead of two. Prosecutors argued that the brothers were lying about the abuse. They referred to the brothers' defense as the abuse excuse. The prosecution also successfully objected to the admission of a large amount of offensive evidence. At this time, Lai Mendez declined to take the stand. Going back to the crime scene, the state placed a lot more emphasis on the brutality of the crime. After this, Lai and Eric Mendez were found of first-degree murder. The jury deliberated 4 days before finding Lai and Eric Mendez guilty of first-degree murder. At the jury's recommendation, the brothers were later sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. One of the reasons because I chose this case was because there was a very interesting piece of evidence, which was a letter written by Eric Mendez to his cousin Andy Cano, and this happened around December 1988. It was about 8 months before the crime, and I just thought it was interesting how I took an interest in this case without knowing it involved a letter in the evidence available for the case. Shortly after we had been and it was just really interesting because we had been examining. It was in our case it was a ransom note, right? Not a casual letter. However, I think it was really interesting because clearly this letter went through at least some degree of forensic analysis to to verify the authenticity of this letter. I'm gonna wrap this up because it's extremely late. I'm already submitting this late, and there's really nothing more to add into this. Thank you for listening. Have a great night.